Today we're going to talk about a topic that's near and dear to my heart. Let's see if this little snippet from Cheech and Chong will give you an idea of what it's about.
Hey! What are you trying to do? You ruined my record, man. I just want it.
Hello, YouTube, and welcome to the sound of Safe and Sound, Texas. I'm David Bianco with episode 2 on vinyl, specifically vinyl grading. For those of you who might not know, vinyl is the word that now represents records. We have 12-inch records and 10-inch records and 7-inch records. The larger 12 and 10s being long playing or extended play versions because they had multiple songs per side. 7-inch typically were called singles, and they typically had one song per side. Although there were British versions of Beatles songs that had two songs per side. They were EP 7-inch kind of releases back in the day. But be that as it may, it's all vinyl. So we're going to focus on the issue of grading vinyl. In other words, used vinyl. How do you know how good it is? Well, there's a Goldmine grading standard that has been developed years ago, and it's kind of the one that is used most often. So it's the one we're going to discuss to some degree today. We're going to also talk about visual grading versus play grading. Now, the Goldmine standard is mainly based on visual grading, although it does talk about some elements of play grading as well. But typically, when someone rates a record, the question is fair to ask, is that simply a visual grade or is it additionally a play grade? Because at the end of the day, you play the record, you don't just look at it. And some issues with records can happen beyond what you can see. So play grading is obviously what you end up doing. You do play analysis when you receive the record to determine, did it meet what my expectations were. So let's look at what the grading sections and categories are. So at the very tippy top, we have mint and near mint minus. And these I put in a tier by themselves because they're really the premier type of ratings. And to be real honest, I think they can be abused. They can be misused. It's kind of like, think about the example when someone is going to sell their used car. You know, they've got the greatest looking used car in the world, and, you know, they're not going to notice the defects that are there, the issues potentially. They're going to basically talk it up a bit, and not in any nefarious way necessarily, but certainly going to give it its best light, so to speak. And so with vinyl, it can be very similar too. And the look of a record can be very deceiving. And here's an example that proves it. You can take a record right out of the sleeve that you buy brand new, break the seal yourself, and there can be visual defects, there can be auditory defects that later you hear when you play. My advice is when you get new records, you clean them before you play them. That sounds counterintuitive. It sounds like, why would you need to? But trust me, you do. And so, if you're going to have that situation with something new, and I think it is worse now than it was in the day, because I think the quality control is not quite as strong, and I think that the production is very high and very smaller amounts of places to press the vinyl. So what are we up against? We're up against supply and demand. High demand, lessening supply means, there's plants that are booked out into 2023 to make records. So, buyer beware. You just need to clean your vinyl when you get it. So these vinyls you get from other people, to speak to whether it's in the near mint grouping, whether that's mint, near mint minus, would really mean that the person selling it knows specifically how it was handled, what it was played on equipment wise with the turntable, tone arm cartridge, how often it was played, how it was maintained. And one can really usually only speak to that if they've bought it brand new themselves and then maintained it, which is a fair degree of my collection is that way because I bought my records when they came out in the day, and I've kept them ever since, hauled them around as I told you in my introductory video. And I can speak to the amount of play they've had, and I can speak to the type of equipment they've been subjected to. When you're buying secondhand, third hand, fourth hand, whatever it is, you don't know. And that's why a visual is a starting point, and that's great. Obviously, if there's a big scratch in it, you're going to hear that. It's going to be bad, no doubt about it. So, I mean, the visual is a starting point. It is, again, not the ideal way to finally determine the record. A play grade is. So it's fair to ask someone selling, is this graded as a play grade or is it just visual only grade? And then if it's visual only, that's fine. What's their return policy? 7 days, whatever. Give me a chance to listen to it. Again, if you go into a store that has turntables available and headphones to listen to, that's perfect. Josie Records here in Dallas area has it. Typically, if I go in there and I'm going to buy some records, I listen to them, and typically half of the records I pick, I typically put back because of some issue. Warps are hard to detect unless you put them on a turntable. They're very easy to detect then, for example. Also any, physical play defects. And so, that's the buyer beware kind of a part that has a big element in vinyl purchasing. So again, very few records really meet the near mint or mint status. So, we get down to, those are the ones that basically been played very few times. People sometimes buy records, put them on tape. Back in the day, 8-track tape wouldn't be really where you'd want to go, but maybe a cassette, definitely a reel-to-reel. So, and then maybe you wouldn't play it very much. And that's fair, and that's fine, and that usually means it's going to be in as good a condition as you could expect it to be. But more likely, you're going to run into records that are in the VG plus or VG category or worse. So VG plus means it does have a few pops and ticks here and there. Visually looks good. It might have a few scuffs. When you pull a record out of the paper sleeve, sometimes you'll get what's called a scuff mark across it. It's not a scratch. It's not an indentation. It shouldn't be audible. It's not what we call a feeler. It doesn't, it's not gouged into the vinyl where you can feel it. And so those are the ones when they're well maintained, well kept, cleaned, kept from dust, kept from fingerprints. There's no spindle marks around the center hole where someone has tried to, put it on the turntable and didn't really look very closely. We used to do that in a radio station when I was DJ, just kind of put the record over there and just kind of feel our way to the spindle hole because, we had other things to be doing with our other hands, getting tape carts ready for commercials or doing a phone discussion with someone that's going to go on air or a listener or something like that. So multitasking, we didn't always have the time to stand over the turntable and hit dead center. So that's a wear indicator. It's also an indicator of how it was handled and maintained. Again, dust, fingerprints, all that's an indication the record was wasn't well maintained, and buyer beware for sure on those. But VG Plus, it's in good visual shape. It plays well. It might have a few pops or ticks here and there. It is a medium that can have that happen. And really, VG Plus is really the lowest grade I will purchase. I won't get or below good, fair, poor. Any of those. I call those bottom ones kind of a vinyl frisbee. VG, maybe depending if I really, really want something and it's hard to find and I find it and I might do that and then wait maybe to find an upgrade copy that I can get VG Plus or better. You might hear people say VG Plus Plus. Excellent is an equivalent of VG Plus, but people saying VG Plus Plus Plus, they're really saying, hey, it's really a strong VG. It has really all the attributes of a VG. It could maybe be a near minus, but I can't really substantiate that it is. So I'm not going to go into the word mint in the rating territory, but it really has the look of a record that was well maintained to this magnitude. So these are the gradings that are used. You need to make your own call on covers. I'm not going to get into that. They're rated as well. Some people, the covers matter tremendously. Some they don't. To me, great cover is nice, but at the same time, if the vinyl's not in the same type of condition that's it's top shelf, then the cover doesn't do me any good. So, but you decide on that. So this is how the grading goes. Again, let the buyer beware. Trust your ears where you can listen to them. Do that. And remember that at the end of the day, you're the ultimate judge about whether it's worth the money that's being asked. We'll get into that discussion about how to know that as one of our episodes coming up. Also, before we close, another little contest. So I'm wearing a T-shirt from a tour of Jars of Clay did several decades ago, I'll just say. And it was one of their earlier albums. And the image you see here is part of the album cover image. So the first person who can comment and tell me the name of the album that went with this particular cover from Jars of Clay will win a prize. So if you would comment with that, if you have it, great. Love that participation. Please subscribe and like. If you did like the video, please like it, like the page, and also share with your friends. And if you have any questions, any comments, anything you'd like covered on a future show, let me know. For now, I'm David Bianco, and thank you for joining the sound of Safe and Sound Texas.